Roberts, and sometimes I think I don't do this as we start our webinar. So I'm Gina Roberts. I'm the regional coordinator from the Southwest region. And we have Natalie Gospodinoff, our new regional coordinator from the Northern region. We have Tiffany Eustace, our regional coordinator from the Northwest region, and Nicole Mayen, a regional coordinator from the Eastern region, our team with us, and that does so much really good work in Virginia. So wherever you may be, please connect with your regional coordinator. But today we are doing a wrap up of the General Assembly. And I know if you have worked with the General Assembly this year, you've done a lot of good work. It's been probably a long 2.5 months for Shannon, Travis, and Hilary, as you have been very busy with the General Assembly. And I know that everybody in the tobacco control community that works, day in and day out with policies and with trying to reduce tobacco use in Virginia knows the strengths and the importance of putting policies into laws. And that's what we're going to discuss today, what happened with this past General Assembly. It was kind of a busy season. So I want everybody to kind of realize what's out there now, what is on the governor's desk, and how that's proceeding. So we have a poll that we would like to put up to start, just to see if you are familiar with what has been going on in the General Assembly. So we will put that up right now and take just a few minutes or a couple of seconds, really. How many tobacco-related bills were introduced in the 2024 General Assembly? 2, 7, 10, or 15? And of those bills, how many passed? And the bills passed, 1, 3, 5, or 6. So take a couple seconds to vote and see if you are aware of how many bills went through. Okay, and now we will see the answers. Very good. 7 was the correct answer. 47% said that. And 6 actually passed. So 1 died. So came out of the General Assembly, 6 came out. And that's what Hilary and Shannon and Travis will be talking through. So very well. I would like to introduce and thank our speakers today for joining us to give this update of the General Assembly. And I would like to introduce them now. We have Hilary Piland, and she's the Public Policy Manager at the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards. Hilary began her role at the association in December of 2016, shortly before the 2017 General Assembly. So she started and then went immediately probably into that General Assembly session. Hilary graduated from East Carolina University with a degree in public relations and communications. And in her current position at the association, Hilary enjoys her role in supporting the community services boards and the vital work they do with individuals with developmental disabilities and behavioral health needs. Hilary is responsible for managing the public policy efforts of the association, which represents the community service boards for state legislative and funding matters. And then we welcome Shannon Quinby. She's the Eastern Regional Director of Preventing Tobacco Addiction Foundation, or Tobacco 21. Shannon joined the Preventing Tobacco Addiction Foundation in 2017 as the Eastern Regional Coordinator or Director, covering 20 states east of the Mississippi. Prior to this, she worked for almost 20 years as a therapeutic and educational consultant, advising families in search of residential treatment for at-risk youth. Her work with families brought to light the overwhelming number of teens whose behavioral difficulties and mental health struggles seem to consistently include early initiation to tobacco and nicotine. She holds a bachelor's degree in liberal studies from Marymount University and a graduate certificate in health and wellness coaching from Georgetown University. She and her husband live just outside of DC in McLean, Virginia. And we also welcome Travis Fellows. Travis is a coalition coordinator for Community Coalitions of Virginia, as well as a community development specialist for Goochland Powhatan Community Services. He came to the field of prevention after nearly a decade and a half in EMS and hospital settings. Travis holds a master's degree in public health from Southern New Hampshire University and currently resides in Augustus County, Virginia. So Hilary, Shannon, Travis, thank you so much again, and we welcome you to this webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to Hilary.
Okay, thank you, Gina. And hello, everyone. I am sharing my screen. I hope you all can see that. Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay. All right. So I'm the chair of the Tobacco-Free Alliance of Virginia's Legislative Policy Committee. So this presentation is based on that committee's priorities. And this is a listing of tobacco and nicotine bills. And so I'll just go to the next slide. So this is the status of these bills as of today. Of course, every bill that I'm going to talk about here passed the House and the Senate, but we're waiting on the governor to act. So he has until April 8th to either veto a bill, sign the bill into law, or amend the bill. And if he amends the bill, then the House and the Senate will take it up during the reconvened session, which I think is April 17th that starts. That's a few days long. All right, so we have to just keep in mind that these bills came very far. We just need the governor to sign them. All right, so the tobacco retail licensure bills, I'm sure all of you know about these. Delegate Hope and Senator Eben introduced them, and this is the 5th year of pursuing these bills. I wasn't involved. I've only known about these bills for I think the past 3 years. So kudos to Shannon and everyone else who's been working on this for a long time. So hopefully this year will be the year. All right, so for these tobacco retail licensure bills, it's just some of the overall provisions of the bills. So what is called PUP penalties, that stands for purchase, use, possession penalties, that those are penalties that would be applied to youth. So that those penalties in the bill were repealed. And so that's good, because we don't want the penalties to be applied to youth. We would want the penalties to be applied to the retailer, because data shows that having penalties on the youth doesn't actually reduce youth usage. And then if you have penalties on the youth, it takes away from the resources that could be used toward enforcing the retailers from not selling to youth to begin with. Another provision in this bill is that the penalty and suspension for vape-only sellers, so that's just the vape stores that you see popping up across the state that just sell vapes. It's not your 7-Eleven and gas station convenience stores. So the penalties for those vape-only stores is stronger than the penalties for the traditional tobacco sellers, which are the gas station convenience stores, Wawa and Sheetz and 7-Elevens. And then also at some point through the General Assembly session, an amendment was put on these bills that would have delayed implementation. And so that would have been bad, because that would have meant that the 2025 General Assembly session would have had to take these bills up again and pass them. So fortunately, that language was removed. So if this bill is signed by the governor the next 2 weeks, then it will become law July 1st. All right, and then so these next 2 slides, I break it out to show what the penalties are for these traditional tobacco retailers, the convenience stores that are all around the state, the Sheetz, 7-Eleven, and Wawa's. So you can see the breakdown of first violation, second violation, and third. The fines increase, and so take note of what the second violation is: a $5,000 fine, and also the retailer, if they incur that second violation, they will be required to then, going forward, have to verify that the customer's ID. They have to use a photographic identification fraud detection software or some form of technology or a scanner that will confirm that their ID is a legit ID. And then, so the third violation is a $10,000 fine and 30-day suspension of retail sales and the use of the tax exemption certificate. And then their fourth violation, all within a 36-month period, would be revocation of the retail dealer's retail sales and use tax exemption certificate. And an ineligibility to possess any such certificate or license for a period of 3 years. Okay, so then these types of retailers, the way this bill is written, these types of retailers would not need to get the license that is referred to in this bill, since these retailers already have a tax and tobacco certificate. So that the licensure that we're talking about in this bill would be applied to the vape stores, which I'll cover next. All right, so then for the vape, I just call it vape liquid nicotine e-cigarette shops. The license would be applied to these stores, the license requirement. And then you'll see the penalty for these, $1,000 for the first violation. And this is the penalty you see at the top right. It says the penalty for selling without a license or also for not verifying their age. So they need to have that license. First penalty is $1,000. Second penalty is $5,000. And with a second penalty, a 30-day suspension of their license. And then for the second violation, if they do not verify the age, they have to do what the other stores need to do, which I said earlier, is use that technology to verify their IDs are legit. They'd have to start using that technology going forward. And then it's a $10,000 fee for the third violation in a 36-month period. And also for that third violation, they lose their license and lose their ability to possess liquid nicotine and vapor products, that they're licensed for that for 3 years. That's a pretty long time to not be able to sell those products. And then this language at the end here, this talks about the list. And so how the tax department will have to keep the list of these vape stores. So department shall compile and maintain a current list of licensed distributors and remote retail sellers of tobacco products and of manufacturers, distributors, and retail dealers of liquid nicotine and nicotine vapor products. This list shall be updated on a monthly basis and published on the department's website. So this language to me is important for the Community Services Board's prevention staff, because this means that they should have easy access to the list of these liquid nicotine and vapor stores where they're located. So they can, because right now the Community Services Board spend a lot of time keeping up with their own list of these stores, and then only to find that the store closed, 1 month ago when they go to do their visits to these stores, which they're required to do. Okay, and then there's another form of penalties written into this bill, civil penalties for these retailers, the retailers of tobacco or hemp products. So going forward now, if this bill passes, tobacco or hemp could not be sold through a vending machine, and seller must verify age of the purchaser. And if they don't, if they are found in violation of that, you'll see the penalty there, $500 civil penalty for first violation, and then $2,500 civil penalty for the second or third violation, all within a 3-year period. All right, and then moving on, these are 2 other bills that are waiting the governor's signature. I know the advocacy groups were against these bills. Shannon might want to speak more to these, that her organization was against these, and because they're not helpful. You can see the talking points here. The registry bills sometimes so this is a registry of the products, and these sometimes get mixed up and confused. Legislators get confused by them because they think that by passing this bill, it's doing what it needs to do, and then they don't need to pass the retail licensure bill. So really, the registry bills are just a waste of state resources. The FDA already has a list of authorized e-cigarette products on its website. The registry can never be accurate because the FDA does not make public a list of the companies that are going through the PMTA process. And then there's data that shows that the states that have passed these registry bills, the language is confusing, and they're having to amend their current language for the confusion and cost that those state bills have caused. All right, and so looks like those two bills will pass, if the governor signs them. And then another bill, this bill did have a companion, but that companion bill died. So Delegate Lopez has a bill that would mean that a locality can prohibit any new retailers from opening within 1,000 feet of a child day center, public or private, or a church-related school. So this bill, I think the prevention folks at the community services boards would support this bill, and our organization supported this bill. This could help reduce, and this is just going forward though. So any current vape stores are grandfathered in, they can remain where they are, but any new stores that want to open cannot be within 1,000 feet of these youth-oriented locations. All right, and that's the end of my presentation on those bills. So thank you very much, and I'll be here to answer questions at the end as well. And then, so now I'll turn it over to Travis Fellows.
All right, thank you, Hilary, and thank you, Gina, for that kind introduction there. I was invited to kind of give the Community Coalition's perspective on the General Assembly session today. And I don't have a slideshow. I'm just going to kind of talk real quick about what we went through, but how things look like from our perspective and how some things were different. And I will start off just kind of by saying I represent Community Coalitions of Virginia, otherwise known as CCOVA. I recognize some names from the introductions in the chat there, so I know some people are familiar with us, some people may not be. But basically, we kind of we're made up of about 4 dozen community coalitions from across the state, as well as other groups, CSBs, some individuals, some recovery organizations. We generally focus on prevention and recovery, but we are looking at a variety of topics, as was mentioned in the beginning. We're not a tobacco specific. And in fact, a lot of our focus, especially this year, has been on fentanyl and opioids, as well as marijuana, with a lot of the marijuana bills that were coming through. And so as far as the General Assembly session, in the past, what CCOVA has done is we've had a dedicated policy and advocacy individual. Unfortunately, she went on to do other things this past year. So we were going into this General Assembly without a dedicated person to bill tracking, which we feel is kind of a very important part of what we're doing for our members, because it is, it's a bit overwhelming to track all of those bills. And I'm not sure if the exact number was given, but there was something like 2,600 bills and resolutions introduced between the House and the Senate this year, which I believe was lower than last year. I think last year was over 3,000. But still, it's a lot to go over, especially in the beginning when all of those bills are being introduced on a daily basis. And so you're constantly having to go back and check and find the new bills. So again, we didn't have a dedicated person. And so I, as the coordinator for the organization, kind of took that on myself. So I was more or less learning as I built the airplane this year. So thank you for those of you who were following the tracking sheet for your patience. Hopefully we provided some good information. But I will actually, real quick, I'm just going to share that tracking sheet for anyone who didn't see it. And I know a lot of organizations have their own bill trackers, and a lot of them are public, so you may have seen others. I know ours looked a little different than some of those, but just to kind of walk you through what we had going on here. But so as was mentioned, we were tracking a number of different substances, a number of topics. And so when I put this together, I broke it down by the substance because some of our member organizations are only interested in cannabis and marijuana. Some are only interested in opioids. Some may only be interested in tobacco. And so this was kind of the best way we were able to put this together, was to break it down by topics. And you can actually see as the bills were moving through the General Assembly, had drop-down menus so that you could change based on what has happened that day, that week, so that people were able to look and see whether something has failed, whether it was incorporated into another bill, whether it was passed by the House, passed by the Senate. And so that's just kind of the way that we came about as far as what would be helpful to our members. Also included the original kind of topic of each bill and a hyperlink to the actual bill on the state LIS, which is the state website where not only do you see the full text of the bills, but you also see every single committee and every person who has sponsored and all of the various information. So that if you needed to go more in depth or something like that, you had that access at one click so that nobody is having to search, HB 674, where is that on the LIS? Also included the patrons, because it is important at the beginning of the session to know who is sponsoring these bills and who's putting them forward, because again, we're representing individuals from across the state. So if somebody is in that district, they can reach out if they want to express support or otherwise. Some of the challenges that kind of came out of this, as you may imagine, to be someone who's not a policy person, and I kind of view this as not only challenges for myself, but also lessons learned for other community groups that may want to take this on in the future. I would suggest, all of the terms. So as we were going along and I'm seeing bills that are continued to 2025 or laid on the table or incorporated, I definitely suggest doing your homework and learning those terms, because that's going to definitely enable your understanding as you're moving through the General Assembly session. And then also, you'll notice at the top here, various deadlines that I had there. So knowing when crossover is, which this year was February 13th, this is where bills went from the House to the Senate or the Senate to the House, and if it was still in a committee, it automatically died. Knowing when the session end date is, it was mentioned, I believe Hilary mentioned it, that the governor has until April 8th to sign or veto or amend bills, and then they come back for that veto session on the 17th. So knowing those deadlines so that you know how quickly you need to get your letters of support in, or how quickly you need to try to get some community support going and before something is voted on. So that was kind of, again, things that we were learning, or I was learning as I was building this, as we were going through this. And I think that if you are looking to do something similar in the future, I think those are important things to start off with. And also, one thing that I need to kind of clarify is, I guess, we're representing a lot of coalitions. We're representing a lot of individuals. How are we different from, let's say, VACSB, that's representing the Community Services Board? And probably the most important distinction here when we're talking about General Assembly is that we have members who, just like the CSBs, can't necessarily express support, can't necessarily lobby for or against a bill, but we also have members who can. We have people who are on our membership who are just individuals, or who are with, again, organizations that are not government affiliated. And so they are able to take up a cause on, a support or against. And so that's one of our strengths, is being able to kind of leverage those people. And while one way that kind of came up this year was we had some individuals create some form emails where you can just kind of change names and you can send them to your legislators to express your opinion on a certain bill, which again, not all of our members can do. Again, state employees, CSB employees, we're not necessarily allowed to lobby like that. For the members that, again, are like the CSBs, because we do have a lot of them, providing one-pagers. And this year, we were only able to do that a little bit. We had some members who actually collected some one-pagers from other organizations or put some together, but we did not have anything necessarily highly coordinated for that going on. But I guess looking ahead to the future, that's one of the exciting things that we just recently, last month, started a new education coordinator. And for those of you who are connected to CCOVA, hopefully you've heard of her, and you will be seeing some communications from her in the future. Frances Gardner, she's going to be creating one-pagers year-round. So we're going to have this kind of stockpile of those one-pagers that we can distribute so that you are able to provide information sheets to your legislator, to your communities, to kind of get that information out as far as the General Assembly bills. And I guess just overall, looking ahead, we'll be definitely, we had some lessons learned this year, and we'll be coordinating a stronger General Assembly response. Maybe even, again, kind of leveraging those individuals who can lobby a little more, coordinating some in-person General Assembly visits and that kind of thing moving into the future. But with that, that's pretty much all I had. So I will turn it back over to Gina.
Great. Thank you, Travis. I'm one that loved your spreadsheet. It really kind of kept me focused through the whole session. And thank you very much, Hilary, for your wrap up of the General Assembly as well, and for your leadership on our Tobacco-Free Coalition of Virginia, which is extremely helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon just really quickly and get her perspective from Tobacco 21, and also maybe a look ahead. As you know, I know we're just finishing the 2024 General Assembly, but the 2025 General Assembly will be around the corner. So Shannon, any thoughts as we move forward with that?
Thank you, Gina, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us on. And as we wait for the governor's decision on the tobacco bills that did pass, I did want to say a few things about the licensing bills as well as the registry bills. They're both companions. The licensing bills, 790, House 790 and Senate 582, as Hilary mentioned, this is a multi-year process. It was a true labor of love. These bills have been through 2 studies. We know in Virginia, the Assembly likes to send things for studies. So we've studied this issue. We've studied it to death in Virginia, and Virginia this year remained one of only 9 or 10 states in the country that doesn't license its tobacco retailers. Strong talking point, but finally legislators started to listen. And although not all health partners were able to fully support the bill, I do want to let everyone know that nobody opposed the bill. A lot of organizations needed to stay neutral because these bills are dense. They have a lot of stuff in them, and organizations have certain provisions they need to see or they don't want to see to be able to fully support. Here at Tobacco 21, we had a lot of input into these bills, the licensing bills, so we were really motivated to keep them strong. And I wanted to let everyone know why we think these are good bills. To find an agency willing to do a licensing program was key. The tax department picked it up and said, we're willing to do it. They're also willing to create a list. I see that Colleen Hughes with Behavioral Services is on the call, and she runs the SINAR program. Having a list of retailers, knowing who's selling these products is a first step in getting our arms around who's selling them to our kids. So we will now be able, if the governor signs, we will now be able to have a full and updated list of who's selling these products at retail. The Tobacco 21 bill that passed in 2019 for the state of Virginia kept in place PUP penalties to kids for trying to buy. We know kids will be kids and they're always going to try to buy this stuff. And we wanted to remove those penalties to keep the responsibility on the retailers for selling lawfully and unlawfully. Another thing the bill does is it removes the military exemption to the state tobacco 21 law. The federal tobacco 21 law does not give an exemption to members of the military. We want to protect everyone. We especially want to protect our troops who need to be tobacco free and nicotine free. So it removes that. It was a bit of a sticking point with some senators, especially, but we were able to keep that in the bill. A big thing that, unless you work in policy, you may not think is a very big deal, but it certainly is to those of us who do, which is that we made all penalties civil. Some of the penalties now in Virginia statute are criminal. You could go to jail for selling tobacco or trying to purchase tobacco. That's just silly. We wanted all these penalties to be civil. And in the bill, they have changed all the penalties to civil. And then one of the most important things about these bills is that the penalty schedules, and there are a couple, but the penalty schedules for selling to anyone under 21 are among the strongest penalty schedules in the country. So Virginia would go from having one of the weakest penalty structures to having one of the strongest in the country. So we really do hope these bills will pass. Now, were they perfect? No, they certainly were not perfect. When you have a bill that's 31 pages long and, you know, it's been condensed down, but you're going to have a lot in it that you don't want in it. There were so many stakeholders involved in this bill. But what we might do next, or what we'd like to do, is to add more compliance checks to the bill, to the statute next year, maybe via legislation. And the reason is the penalties are strong, but to get to those penalties, you have to inspect the retailers and catch them violating the law before they start suspending licenses. So we'd like to add compliance checks to state statute at the appropriate time. Another thing that I wanted to mention is what we have done to keep the fiscal note on this bill low is that to put compliance checks once only every 2 years, I think we have, but we are attempting through legislation to get some of the Juul settlement money into this tobacco fund that's created by the bill. If we can get a couple of $1 million a year for the next few years of that Juul settlement money, that will go a long way toward doing compliance checks and making sure that this prevention effort is strong. So that is via a budget amendment, that Delegate Hope and I think Senator Eben too has put their name on that for the budget to get a hold of some of that Juul money. That's all in the licensing bills. The registry bills, we're seeing those all over the country. They have been introduced by the tobacco industry. They're being pushed by the tobacco industry. We don't oppose them in their intent, but we do see them as clunky and expensive. And we know that states are, they're just tied up in a lot of litigation over these registry bills because they're very confusing and they do invite legal scrutiny. So we don't quite know where that registry bill is going to go or what the governor will do with that. That's really all I wanted to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the bills.
Thank you, Shannon, for that perspective. Very helpful. I am going to turn it over to Nicole, who has been monitoring the Q&A, and see if we had any questions come up.
Hi, thank you all for your great explanations. Hilary did a great overview with all the bills, and Travis, your spreadsheet was great, to keep track of everything. And, someone asked me something and I'm like, I don't know, let me check that spreadsheet. And so it's great. You kept it, updated, and it was great to reference. And Shannon, everything you said was really great. And I wanted to ask you something that you just mentioned about compliance checks. You said, I think you said they're currently every 2 years or so. Can you, do you know who's doing the compliance checks right now? And can you clarify if it is every 2 years or, and how often we want to increase those checks?
Well, sure, Nicole, right now, prior to this bill passing and what is in statute now, there are no specific required number of compliance checks. They are done by our ABC, but they do them when they can do them. They do them as they can afford to do them. They're expensive to do because you're using an underage decoy who goes in and attempts to make a purchase of a product that, and if they're successful, they fail, that retailer fails, etc. Nothing much happens to them in current code. They can just fail all day long and get a slap on the wrist. And so the compliance check portion of enforcement is critical to it working. But again, this being Virginia and these bills having failed so many years in a row, we knew we needed to keep the fiscal note low. In order to do that, we kept the number of compliance checks low, knowing that we could increase them as needed. And the tobacco retailers were told that if we need to check on you more, we're going to do it. And they're aware of that. So they're aware we may have to open up this code and stick in some more compliance checks.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And so if we just have a question that came in. So if a retailer is caught on a first offense, do we know if a retailer is caught on a first offense that a second compliance check will occur before another 2 years has passed? Because I think it was Hilary's presentation when he talked about the first offense, and then I can't remember if it's just the vaping or all retailers, if it's like so many offenses within the first 3 years or something like that. And I guess it kind of goes to Shannon's point where there's no minimum or required number of checks, to really look at that. So I guess in moving forward, if it's not already, do we already have a plan or a schedule of, if a retailer has a first offense, how soon after do we want to do another check per se? Hilary, have you thought about that, or is it in the bills already?
That's a good question about how quickly they would do another check. I don't know. Shannon might know if that's in the bill, but yeah, for both categories, the vape stores and then the traditional tobacco stores, it was within a 36-month period to have 1, 2, or 3 violations.
So best practice for that particular issue, Nicole, is for there to be a follow-up check within 3 months, within 90 days. That is not mandated in the bill. We had it in, it got taken out. ABC did agree that for the offenders, they will follow up within 6 months. So again, it's not best practice, but ABC has assured us that they will be aware of who's violating, and they will be tracking them and doing an unannounced compliance check on that particular retailer soon thereafter.
Thank you for that information. And Colleen Hughes, for most of you probably on the call, know she's from Behavioral Health, and she, was seeing over all the signer checks. So she said ABC will conduct 100 compliance checks this year between required signer checks and some extra as well. I know people from Behavioral Health, you guys do, the legwork, and you go out and you go in and do all those checks. And I know it's a lot of work and a lot of time as well. So let me see what other questions we have. I know that in one of the registration questions was asking about tobacco retail licensing, and I know Hilary went over that in her presentation. So hopefully we'll see. And can you remind the audience when is the last day? Because now the governor has to review, right? Can you remind the audience when that deadline is for the governor to either veto it or sign?
It's April 8th.
April 8th. Okay, so we have a few weeks to go as well. About 3 weeks. Another question from the audience during registration was, is there any legislation to address the high rates of youth vaping, nicotine, marijuana, or other substances?
None that I know of other than the retail licensure bill. I mean, so The community services boards prevention staff, however, they are constantly working on their own prevention campaigns that they just have ongoing for not just vaping and tobacco, but all opioid use and marijuana prevention too for youth. So that's happening as a prevention measure. It's not a form of legislation. It's just through funding from the state that, you know, that funds the community services boards to do that type of prevention work.
Yeah, I know a lot of in my area are doing some I think they're using youth to really try to push forward with you know, the education portion, which is great, you know, because they're the ones who know what youth, you know, want to hear and the information that they need to know. So using youth to have those educational campaigns are really beneficial as well. All right, no questions to Q&A. I don't think I saw any in the chat. Do any other fellow regional coordinators have any questions or you want to clarify? Let me see if I have.
Someone had a question about marijuana, youth and marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So I can fill everyone in on I don't know how far back to go. So I'm sure everyone's aware that the bills to allow retailers of cannabis to come in, you know, to start the retail shops for cannabis. We're waiting on the governor to see if the governor will sign those two bills. I don't know if he will. And so, but the longer that goes on, you know, there's a negative to the retailers not coming to play and not selling cannabis. So when the bill was first passed, I think it was 2 years ago, when marijuana became legal in Virginia, it written into the bill states that 25% of the tax revenue from marijuana sales from these retail shops, when they become up and running, will go to DBHD, Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, and which will then go to the community services boards for prevention and treatment of youth prevention of marijuana and treatment for all ages of marijuana use disorder. And so originally, the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards were against the legalization of marijuana, you know, overall. But if they're going to go ahead and legalize it, then go ahead and have these retail stores begin so that the funding from those stores could then go to treatment and prevention. So now where we are is we're waiting to see if these retail stores will open, because we want that funding to come to the community services boards so they can provide those prevention campaigns. And then Virginia Association of Community Services Board had asked, so we knew that the retail stores would take a year or two to get up and running once this legislation passed. So we had asked for bridge funding last year and this year, so the community services boards could go ahead and have, we had asked for 2.5 million, so they could go ahead and have funding to start those youth prevention campaigns. But unfortunately, it didn't make it into the final budget last year, and it didn't make it in there this year. So the next step is just to see if this legislation passes and then wait for the retailers to come up and start selling these products and get the revenue from that. So that's a form of prevention, youth cannabis prevention, that I know about, that will happen eventually once the funding comes. But of course, the community services boards are providing their own type of prevention for youth cannabis as time allows, because they provide prevention for all sorts of things. But they'll do what they can. But this extra funding would be helpful.
Yeah, great. Hopefully that goes through. I did have a question. When you were going over the bills, Hilary, one of them was about the not having any retailers within 1,000 feet from childcare centers or schools or things like that, which I think is really great. You know, other states, other countries have that as well. And I think it's the Signard website, one of the websites that I know Colleen has showed us, that they actually is a map and you can see how many retailers are, you know, within, you know, so many feet from childcare centers or schools. So it's really interesting to see that. And I can find the that website, and I'll ask Tiffany to add it into our follow-up email. But it's really interesting. You can see the, density, the proximity, and how many of those retailers really are around, children. And a lot of our bills, in 2019, we passed a bill where there has to, each school has to, every public school K through 12 in Virginia have to implement a tobacco-free policy. And so, having those places, far away from, childcare centers and schools is really important too, because it really lessens. Oh, thank you, Colleen. She added it in the chat. It's the Counter Tools website. So you can go on, it's interactive. You can, narrow it down. You can go from the state to like your locality. But I think that's really important too. The less, children have access to that or seeing that, it, changes, what's the word, how the normalcy, I guess, of it. And I think Shannon said there was a companion bill with it. Hilary, do you know, or Travis, do you know what the companion bill was? And this is just my curiosity to,
Oh, the
go along.
companion bill died. So right now it's
Okay.
just House Bill 947, Delegate Lopez.
Okay.
I
Gotcha.
think the companion bill was by Siebold from Northern
Okay.
Virginia. But this one, Lopez's is still alive, so hopefully the governor will sign it.
Yeah. Well, that'd be great. I think that's another, step forward. Because I feel like they're popping up everywhere, especially, vaping stores with like the bright lights. And of course, with youth, they're attracted to that as well. So that'd be really interesting to see. And the current, I think the bill said the stores that are grandfathered are the ones that are, already in play before July 1st, I guess, because that's when the fiscal year starts again. But hopefully that'll help. I know, yeah, there are a lot everywhere. And Tiffany says she has a question if you want to go ahead.
I was just curious. I'd heard a comment made from one of our strong advocates last year when they heard about this going into effect 1,000 feet. But that has to do specifically with just vape shops. And I thought they had mentioned that the data shows that youth are not actually really buying from vape shops, that they're actually mostly buying from gas stations. So I was just curious, any thought about that? I know as a youth growing up, like that's where you went to the gas station at lunch break and, to go get lunch or whatever. And so I could see them more going there. So I wondered if there's any thought about that.
I think, Tiffany, there's data to support both. The kids are getting these products wherever they can get them. And it might be the local vape shop that turns its a blind eye to the age verification process. And it might be the local gas station. But I think we're throwing everything at it that we can. And if we can keep these new shops from popping up close to youth oriented facilities or schools where they can't easily leave campus and go get a vape and come back, that's what we're doing. But I think youth are reporting that they're getting from vape shops and gas stations.
Thank you.
And just to jump back to the question about the retailers and their first offense and a check after, Shannon did say in the chat that the bill does require follow-up of checks for violators within 6 months of the violation. And do the speakers, Hilary, Shannon, and Travis, have anything last words to wrap up? And then after that, I'll send it over to Gina.
I don't think so. None from me. Just thank everyone for being here. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, similarly, thank you for thinking of CCOVA and bringing this into this conversation. It was a great conversation here.
Thank you all again. I think I've said it. Very, very nice presentation. I think Shannon was the one that said some of the bills were like 36 pages, even more. So it's so much detail in there that a lot of us just can't understand all the language and get a concept of what's coming out. So Hilary and Shannon and Travis, you did an amazing job kind of breaking it down so we can very clearly understand what is on the governor's desk for him to sign right now. So thank you all for this. Really appreciate it. We have a couple minutes, and I did want to share really quickly. Nicole is going to share a couple ads that we have. It is not only the first day of spring, but it's March Madness as well. So we do have a few ads that are available to all of our partners to put out in your social media, in your newsletters, wherever you can. And it also, and this will be in the follow-up email that we send out to all of you as well, that you can use. You can use some messages that will come with it, some copy that will go with the ads. So please look through the ads, use them if you can. We really want to drive, any tobacco user out there that would like to quit now, Virginia, to get some assistance with quitting. And everything is you're hearing more and more about March Madness right now. So we designed the ads to really play into that and hopefully get some notice. So thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. And we will be getting some more information to you about that as well. So we are going to wrap up the webinar today, give you about 5 more minutes added to your day. I do want to encourage you all to attend our next webinar, and that is April the 16th. And we will again be talking, some really strong policies in our local communities about implementing tobacco taxes where they can in the localities. So please join us for that. And learn more about how a couple of our localities in Virginia have already done that. So thank you again. Enjoy the first day of spring. Hopefully it will be a little bit warmer as the day goes on, and then just enjoy this week. Thank you so much for attending. Bye.